Saturday, the 31st of August, 2024, last day. I think we're 2 days before the new moon. I've been stretching myself a little bit, trying to figure out what kind of project I could take on as I await my continuation of the NGC project. Here's a look at the mountains. Last night we had quite a bit of haze, and there does appear to be a good deal of haze up on Cannon Mountain. Possibly smoke. Anyway, last night I was out again with a 75X, but I got a project for this evening. I'm not sure how it's going to play out, largely because so many of the studies I want to observe are westering at this point. Basically what I'm going to do is run the exposure time down quite a bit so I get some nice stellar points. And we're going to go after globular clusters. I don't think we're going to pick up any in Scorpius, but you don't know that for sure. I'm going to try to get an early start. Anyway, turn on the Losman DG11. I've already removed the 0.5 Barlow because I do want to actually get these globular clusters at 150X. I've got about, what it says here, 40 studies on my list, starting with 6093, which actually is M80. I doubt we're going to be able to make it out, but if I start early for Skydark, it's not just possible that I will catch something at Scorpius right above the top of the hill there. Cross your fingers. Do a warm restart. We'll go to menu. This has been working pretty good for me. Park, the current position, menu, time, wait 3 seconds, 2, 3, synchronizing the clocks approximately. All right, so that's preparations. So as I was saying, tonight we're going to go after globular clusters, but we're going to use 64 flood, 42 decibels of gain, roughly equivalent to a 12-inch telescope. We're going to use higher magnification. I'm hoping that the field of view on the screen will be relatively pristine and we will get a fairly decent resolution of these clusters by 1, not overexposing them, and by 2, running at a higher magnification. It's just another opportunity to characterize the Rev 2 system in terms of a new class of object studies that I haven't really spent a great deal of time on. Those cities of stars, globular clusters. Just spent a few seconds here trying to match the color of the sky to the color in the screen. Drop the color gain in the hue, but it still looks kind of deeper blue than the sky actually looks. I can live with that. So we'll lose a little bit of color tonight maybe, but that is not an issue for globular clusters. It is now 8:30 in the evening. We are getting a little bit of aperture block, I'd say about 40% of the aperture. So I'm actually kind of pleased with this view. Let's go ahead and have a look at Messier 92 before we drop south into Scorpius. Here we have Messier 92, another globular cluster in Hercules, about a magnitude fainter, magnitude 6.5, and less than half the size, 11.2 arc minutes, 26,700 light years distant, puts it at about the same distance as Messier 13. We're at right ascension 1707 and declination plus 430811. I do believe we are getting a little bit of aperture block by the roof tries. Okay, we're going to have a look at Messier 80, otherwise known as NGC 6093. So it is kind of late in the summer. It's well past culmination to the south, but still visible above the garage roof. There's our look. I'll give you the data on it. And I will be giving you the data out of the NGC catalog so we can get a sense of its brightest stars and what class globular cluster it is. NGC 6093, globular cluster Scorpius, is Messier 80. Magnitude 7.3, smallish 5.1 arc minutes. Its brightest stars are magnitude 12.5, so they should be visible in a 5-inch scope. The class 2, so very dense, at 28,000 light years distant. Right ascension 16-1702, declination minus 2258-31. Developing on the screen now, we should be getting a view of NGC 6121, also known as Messier 4. Globular cluster in Scorpius. M4 is 5.4 magnitude, 26.3 arc minutes. It's of a size and brightness of Messier 13. However, it's much closer, and you'd expect for its brightest stars to be much brighter. Brightest stars in 6121 M4 are 10.8 magnitude. It's a class 9, a mere 7,200 light years distant, but you wouldn't want to drive there. We're at right ascension 1623.35, declination minus 26.31.34, and you should be able to see the characteristic line of brightest stars bisecting its core. NGC 6144 is a globular cluster in Scorpius, faintish, magnitude 9.1 and small, 6.2 arc minutes as you might expect. Its brightest stars are magnitude 13.4. It's a class 11, 31,000 light years distant. We're at right ascension 1627.13, declination minus 26.01.26, and far enough north, although it's putting a little tension on the power cable, that it did not disconnect the Rev 2 unit. And we get, for that reason, we do get this faintish view, such as it is. This particular globular cluster is NGC 6205, also known as Messier 13. We're having even more of the aperture blocking going on, but it is darker out now, and I did want to include the data related to brightest stars, etc. Anyway, NGC 6205, globular cluster Hercules, Messier 13, magnitude 5.8, 23.2 arc minutes in size. Its brightest stars are magnitude 11.9 and should be visible through a 3-inch telescope. It's a class 10, so rather loosely constructed, 23,000 light years distant. We are at right ascension 1641.41, declination 36.27.35, and I imagine that's as good a view as we got earlier because we're now about 10 more minutes into towards sky dark. Okay, what we have before us now is NGC 6229, globular cluster and Hercules, or more accurately, not before us now. Magnitude 9.4, 3.8 arc minutes in size, magnitude 15.5 stars, probably beyond the reach of anything other than a 15 to an 18-inch telescope. This is a class 4, 103,000 light years distant, right ascension 1646.58, declination 47.31.38. Get on out there with a scope of 8 inches or larger should reveal the cluster, perhaps even a 6-inch scope, but you will see nothing more than a faint nebulosity with no resolved stars, because this is a very dense class 4 cluster. What we have here is a very tiny NGC 6235 globular cluster in Ophiuchus. Wasn't on my original list. I was just scanning through adventitiously. It's magnitude 8.9, tiny 1.9 arc minutes. Its brightest stars are magnitude 14. It's a class 10, 32,000 light years distant. Right ascension 1653.25, declination 22.10.34. What we have here is NGC 6254, globular cluster of course, in Ophiuchus is also Messier 10. Magnitude 6.6, 12.2 arc minutes in size. Brightest stars are magnitude 12, should be picked up in a 3-inch scope. It's a class 7, 14,000 light years distant. Bright ascension 165709, declination -40555. You're now looking at NGC 6266. Otherwise known as Messier 62, is a globular cluster in Ophiuchus. Magnitude 6.4, 14.1 arc minutes in size. Brightest stars are magnitude 13.2. It's a class 4, so fairly dense, 22,000 light years distant. It's at right ascension 170112 and declination -30 degrees, 6 minutes and 44 seconds. I almost unplugged the Rev 2 again, but not quite, as you can see. NGC 6273 is another globular cluster in Ophiuchus, aka Messier 19, 6.8 magnitude, smallish, 5.3 arc minutes in size. Magnitude 14, the brightest stars. This is a class 8 at 28,000 light years distant. Right ascension 170237. Declination -26 1603. NGC 6284, globular cluster in Ophiuchus. Magnitude 9, 2.7 arc minutes in size. Tiny. It's a class 9, 47,000 light years distant. Right ascension 170728, declination -244551. We are approaching sky dark. I can tell you what time it is, but I prefer not to flip back. It's probably somewhere around 9:15 in the evening. I will be covering as many of these westering globular clusters as possible this evening, and maybe the next night out we will cover the ones to the east. What we should be seeing here is NGC 6287, a globular cluster in Ophiuchus. Magnitude 9.2, 2.7 arc minutes in size. Brightest stars magnitude 14.5. So they should be resolvable with the current settings: 64 flood, 42 decibels gain. Magnitude 9.2, 2.7 arc minutes in size. A class 7, 27,000 light years distant. We're at right ascension 170509, declination -22 42 25. And I am not seeing this globular cluster anywhere on the screen. I'll look for it tomorrow. Magnitude 8.2, 3.5 arc minutes in size. Brightest stars are magnitude 14.3. It is a class 4, 29,000 light years distant. Right ascension 171010, declination 26 34 55. And as I mentioned, I am kind of just adventitiously slewing through the catalog in the GEM 2 system, and have found numerous other globular clusters unsuspected when I did research online this day in anticipation of tonight's video, real-time imaging. You should be seeing NGC 6304, globular cluster in Ophiuchus, magnitude 8.4, 3.8 arc minutes in size. Magnitude, brightest stars 14.2. It's a class 6, 20,000 light years distant. Right ascension 171432. Declination pushing the limits, -29 27 43. You're seeing it, so the power cable did not disconnect. Now I want to point out that I am not able to see the screen at all. I can't even see the display on the camera. We are going deep south once again to NGC 6316, globular cluster Ophiuchus. Bright, magnitude 8.1, 4.9 arc minutes in size. Brightest stars are magnitude 16. I do not expect to see stars that faint at the current settings, especially so far south. This is a class 3, 37,000 light years distant. Right ascension 171637, declination -280822. Here we should be seeing a brightish globular cluster. Now I want to tell you, the GO2 has not been very accurate tonight, so you might be seeing these things all over the screen. This is NGC 6325, globular cluster Ophiuchus. Faint, magnitude 10.2, small, 1.6 arc minutes, magnitude 14.7, class 4. The brightest stars, 14.7, should be within reach if we were in the sky's middle third. 31,000 light years distant, right ascension 17,1758, declination minus 23, 45, 57. Finally had a chance to synchronize, this time to NGC 6333, globular cluster Ophiuchus, also known as Messier 9. Magnitude 7.9, 5.5 arc minutes in size, brightest stars of 13.5, should be visible through a 6-inch telescope at the eyepiece. This is a class 8, 27,000 light years distant, right ascension 17, 19, 11, declination a mere minus 18, 30, 58. This should be NGC 6342. NGC 6342, globular cluster Ophiuchus, is magnitude 9.5, 3 arc minutes in size, brightest stars magnitude 15, class 4, 30,000 light years distant. We're at 1721.10 right ascension and minus 1935.14 in declination. I can't be sure which of the two brightest studies on the screen are actually NGC 6355, globular cluster Ophiuchus, magnitude 8.6, 6.1 arc minutes in size, 23,000 light years distant. Right ascension 1723.58, declination minus 26.21.10. Your guess is as good as mine. NGC 6356, another globular cluster in Ophiuchus. The snake charmer sure has called up a lot of stellar cities. Magnitude 8.2, 3.5 arc minutes in size. The brightest stars are magnitude 15. It's a class 2. Apparently one of the most dense globular clusters possible. 54,000 light years distant. Right ascension 1723.34, declination minus 1748.51. I just synchronized the scope to it. There is some resolution of stars. Magnitude 15, not bad. 150x, 12-inch scope settings. Well, if I had to guess where 6366 is, I'd say it's right there. NGC 6366, globular cluster Ophiuchus, magnitude 9.5, 5.8 arc minutes. The brightest stars are magnitude 13.6. We're well positioned in the sky. This is a class 11, 12,000 light years distant. We're at right ascension 1727.44, minus 504.35. This will prove to be our last globular cluster of the evening, although we won't carpe noctem out on it because I want to have a look at the settings, looking at the Ring Nebula first. NGC 6401, globular cluster Ophiuchus, magnitude 7.4, mere 1 arc minute in size. Wow. It's a class 9, 24,000 light years distant. Right ascension 1738.36. Declination minus 23.54.32. I'm going to synchronize to Vega. We'll have that final carpe noctem look at Messier 57, the Ring Nebula, just to get a sense. We are now into sky dark. If I look overhead, I can see the Milky Way. However, I cannot say whether or not I am seeing the dark bands in the Milky Way at this point because I have too much light in my eye from the screen. Here we have our 150x view of Messier 57, the Ring Nebula in Lyra, magnitude 9.4, 86 by 62 arc seconds in size, 2,300 light years distant. We're at right ascension 1853.35, declination 3301.45. I do believe we're seeing the central star, which is magnitude 15.5, and the settings are what I consider the equivalent of a 12-inch scope, 64 flood, 42 decibels of gain control. Very nice view at 150x. I think this is a great one to go out on. we will pick up the NGC and Messier series of globular clusters once on the morrow, if the sky is decent. Right now we are into sky dark. We're getting a great view of the ring at 150x. I have 2 bars left on the camera. This will probably be a rather long video, but I think everyone out there who enjoys globular clusters in the summer season will want to have an idea of just how many can be turned up if you begin around the summer solstice and begin to search out globular clusters in the summer sky. Carpe Noctem.